Cheshire Inland Wetland and Watercourses Commission to order at 7:31. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. We can each say it ourselves. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Carrie, would you please call the roll?
Chairman Kurtz,
Here.
Dr. Dimick,
Present.
David Brzezowski,
Here.
Tim Graver, Will McPhee,
Here.
and Tom Norback.
Present.
We have a full house. We do have a quorum. Next item will be the approval of the minutes, both the public hearing from April 6th and the regular meeting from April 6th. Do I hear a motion?
I move approval with these corrections that I had submitted.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Dr. Dimick and Tom Norback. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried unanimously by those commission members present. Communications.
First communication is a public hearing notification for an application to the Siting Council in regards to a cell tower placement at 185 Academy Road. The commission received notice of the application itself at the last meeting. And in that information, it stated that the nearest wetlands are over 100 feet away. So this is just notification if commission members were interested to put in information to the public hearing, that you have the information regarding that meeting. And that's it for communications.
Thank you. Inspection reports.
No written inspections. Staff inspection, we received a complaint on Williamsburg having to do with a neighbor pushing leaves into potentially a wetland area. I will be reaching out to that property owner and getting more information. At this time, it's too early to tell if it's actually a violation. And also a complaint on Carter Lane having to do with ATVs in a wetland and possibly trees that had been cut. And again, I will contact the homeowner and start to have a conversation to even determine if there's a violation on that lot as well.
All right. Enforcement actions.
For 720
Mr.
Yalesville Road,
Okay, go ahead.
sorry. Yes, for 720 Yalesville Road, they had received their zoning permit to construct the house in accordance with the wetlands permit that was issued. And I've been in contact with Mr. Havarenge, and he is aware of the corrective order and the planting plan that's expected to be completed within the next couple of months. So that seems to be on track.
Wonderful. Mr. Krasnicki on Talmadge Road.
I did speak with their son today, and he informed me that the owners at 152 Talmadge Road are out of the country right now, and that they have been for a little while and are expected to remain out of the country for a little while. He had stated that the fence was taken down and that there are no plans to reinstall the fence. And I had expressed to him that to do any work in that area or 50 feet around that pond would require a permit. So if they were entertaining putting the fence up again, that's something that requires a permit. He stated that he believes that his parents are aware of that. Additionally, he stated that the stone and concrete that was placed at the top of the pond, around the margin of the pond, that they don't have any plans to make any changes to that. They do not plan on removing it, and they do not plan on adding any more to it. And when I went back through the file and I reviewed Ryan McAvoy's letter back in January, when he did a review of that site, he had indicated that there were no constraints placed upon that pond with the material that was placed at the top of the pond. So as it is right now, it does not appear as that there's a violation on that property, and with the with the fence now removed, there's no need for a permit after the fact on that. So my suggestion is that we would leave the cease and desist order in place and just monitor, understanding that the property owners are out of the country right now, and just wait to see when they come back if any activity starts up again. So that would be my recommendation, but certainly if the commission has any other suggestions or another direction, certainly happy to hear it.
I guess fair, there's no imminent danger, leaving it the way it is that I can see. And I know Tom and I will drive by there once in a while. Something should arise. Any other comments?
I think we're good where it stands, keeping that cease and desist in place.
Okay, so just keep an eye on it.
Okay.
Keep it on the agenda. Okay.
Okay.
Unfinished business. We have the permit application of South Marion Road for a house. And we do have a draft motion. And I assume it's going to be moved. And I would like to suggest that when we vote, we're going to vote individually, and I would expect you would give some sort of general reason for why you're voting the way you are, in case there should be a question later on. It doesn't have to be the kind of thing that you'd have to hire a lawyer to draft something you're going to say, or a public relations person. Just generally how you feel about the decision you made to vote for or against this particular application. And with that, we do have a draft motion. What's your pleasure?
Mr.
just-
Chairman, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I could just add to sort of clarify the record. The record at the last meeting was left that I would be drafting one motion to approve and one motion to deny. And what I'd like the record to reflect is that after speaking with the town planner, that there's only one motion that's drafted, and that is a motion to approve. So that is the only motion that has been provided to the commission tonight. And so that's what's up for discussion tonight. I just wanted to put that on the record so that it's clear from the last meeting to tonight why there's only one draft motion.
Mr. Chairman, procedurally, I will move staff wording her revised motion just so we have an object in front of us for the discussion.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, move it, Dr. Dimick, seconded by Ms. Dunn. Any comments? Discussion?
I guess I have a comment, Mr. Chairman. We're not usually, what's the word I'm looking for? We don't usually get requested to give our reasons, or encouraged to give our reasons for approving or not approving something, although oftentimes we do. Sometimes it's just, I don't want to say it's a gut feeling, but there's, the overall picture, I guess, is what I was struggling with on this one, making sure that there was oversight. So I guess it's not hard to put into a coherent thought. So I was going to say I was uncomfortable with that, but I guess I'm not, because I just did it.
Okay, all I meant was you don't have to worry about somebody taking down every word you said and then suing you.
Right.
Very general, that'll come later maybe. We'll see.
I might expand on the chairman's request for giving reasons, and that is because if our decision either way goes to an appeal, the appellate court will look at the written record of the meeting to help determine judgment as to whether to uphold or deny any verdict that we come up with. So the more material they have on the record, the easier it is for them.
All right. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I
Go ahead.
will further state that I've been on the fence in this thing for a long time, and initially I was very much opposed to the proposal, but I think a number of improvements have been made, and although the whole thing still makes me nervous, I cannot see the present proposal, assuming the stipulations are adhered to, uh, can definitely be said to harm the wetlands. There's a possibility that the construction can, but I can't say that it's more probable than not. And therefore, I probably will vote to approve the application.
Oh, I was gonna get ready to start the vote, and I was gonna suggest that, oh, I'm sorry, are there any more comments first?
Yeah, there's three documents referenced in the draft. The draft proposal. The first one is the wetlands impact assessment for Mr. Sanford, and we've seen that many times. The one dated March the 2nd. The site plan, the subsurface sewage disposal system. Just to clarify, that wasn't shown on the drawing for the site. Is that correct? Am I referring to the appropriate document for the sewage disposal system?
Well,
And the reason I'm
Tim-
asking this question is first attached, or the first document referenced was included in the package that was sent. The other two were not. I'm trying to remember back when those were sent. I want to make sure that I'm referencing the right documents.
Yes, so that site plan, that was sent for the second public hearing.
Okay,
So that site plan is titled subsurface sewage disposal system, even though it is the overall site plan that locates the house.
okay, so it's the drawing of the total area.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and then the construction sequence, I know we reviewed that in a previous meeting. The
Yes.
one dated March the 15th. Is there any way that that can be shown once again? Because I know that there was a lot of discussion about the site sequence and some suggestions made. I don't know what the final version of that sequence looks like.
So we only received that one version of the
Okay.
sequence. And certainly I can pull it up. It's just going to take me a couple of minutes
Yeah.
here. So hold on.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, maybe people can feel free to talk about some other information as I'm locating this. It's gonna take
While you're
just a-
doing that, are there other comments?
Since I wasn't here last time, should I abstain from voting? I mean, I read the minutes, but
Well, you're fine.
I don't think it's necessary. I had the minutes and you were there for several meetings,
yeah,
and the minutes are, we have pretty complete minutes, so if you read it, you know
right.
probably more than I do, but you were there, so I don't think
I don't
missing
think so.
one meeting is
Okay,
preventing you from voting.
okay.
I will call your attention to one change in the revised motion at my suggestion. Under stipulation 10, now reads, an application must be submitted to the commission for the planting plan along the cleared area. And then I have added and wetland to create a densely planted buffer. We talked about this at the last public hearing, and Darren Overton agreed at that time that a densely planted buffer would be a good idea, but it was not. So I'd asked staff to add that densely planted part into the stipulations. Having in mind that we've had some buffers and some other projects that have gone in and they were sparse enough that you drive a lawnmower between the plantings. And so
Okay, so there we have the construction sequence on the screen.
Yep, yeah, it is showing. Thank you. Okay, yeah, if you scroll down some, Suzanne.
Scrolled down fast and I was reading. I didn't get my
Oh,
split rail fence.
yeah, Tom, that's what I was looking for, where the split rail fence is installed in the sequence.
It
13,
is 13.
Okay, yeah, 13, I
There
see
is.
it now.
Thank you.
It is also shown on the plans. Scroll down a little bit more.
So it's after the framing of the house and the foundation,
Yes.
after the site work, foundation, framing, and the split rail fence.
We wanted it prior to that.
What I'm remembering, Tom.
We wanted it prior to excavation.
now we wanted the other fencing up there prior to excavation, including the orange fencing. I think that's,
No, I didn't trust orange fencing. Orange fencing, oftentimes it's just orange fencing. I mean, it's a good warning, but it's.
Run over.
I know what I felt. Maybe I didn't relate it that well, but I feel that it's that you're more apt to go past a split rail fence or even gently nudge it, whereas the orange fencing is very pliable and almost feels like just a warning, not a barrier. So I gotta say, I like the idea of the split rail fence being up and the orange fence a warning for that.
That's what we had discussed before.
That's what I'm remembering as well.
So, Mr. Chairman, my recommendation would be that we could revise the stipulations and make there be a 6E. And the E would stipulate, number 6 says, prior to any construction activities, clearing, tree cutting. Oh, well, then that wouldn't work because you would need to clear the area before.
Right after that, it would work.
stipulation
Well,
A.
It can be its own standalone. Prior to clearing the property, the silt fence and orange snow fence will be installed. After foundation installation and framing, the split rail fence shall be installed with permanent markers. That's what number 8 says.
Suzanne, can I ask you just to scroll up so I can see what you're talking about?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's not on this, it's on the draft motion, which I can put that up on the screen if you
Oh,
like.
I'm sorry.
So it was number 8 and it got moved to 13 by,
No, there's
No, number
number 8 in our stipulations is number 13 in the proposed construction sequence.
oh, all right.
Yes.
I
Would
think it needs
members
to be
like me to put up the
consistent.
draft motion on the screen?
No,
I'm trying to
I
read
was.
it now.
Got it.
Okay.
So if commission members are not satisfied with after the foundation installation and framing to put up this split rail fence, then number 8 can be modified.
I would do that. I think it needs to be in prior to the excavation.
Number 8 on the construction sequence, correct?
No, sorry, number 8 on the draft motion. Stipulation number 8 on the draft motion, which is on the 3rd page.
Well, I read, as it reads now, it says prior to clearing of property, silt fence and orange snow fence will be installed. After foundation installation, split rail fence shall be installed. So we could just move, rearrange 8 to read prior to clearing of the property, silt fence, orange snow fence, and split rail fence should be installed. And after foundation installation, permanent markers shall be attached to the fence.
Yeah,
Well-
I think we need almost to break this into another sentence. So prior to clearing of the property, the silt fence and orange snow fence will be installed.
And then
Period.
prior to excavation,
Prior
the
to
split rail
excavation,
fence
then
shall
the
be
split
installed.
rail.
Yeah,
Yes.
And I would say, I mean, I guess that I think common sense tells that those that you would want the orange fence in front of the split rail fence So they would just have to use their heads about where they put the orange fence and,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? And then put the split rail fence behind it, I would think, but I guess that's,
Well, that can be spelled out to say prior to excavation, the split rail fence shall be installed with permanent markers attached to be located behind the silt fence and orange snow fencing.
as located on the plan.
Yes,
We don't want to just put it, we don't want to give them
correct.
too much sway at where they put it. We want it where we want it. And more the warning, the orange fence has a little more latitude, and that, and the only latitude it has is to be moved closer to the house, not farther away.
Yes,
Fair enough, guys?
Get your phone.
Yes.
If Tom is moving that amendment, I will second.
I am moving that amendment. I'm struggling with the verbiage, but the spirit of that I am moving.
Yeah, we can have someone, staff or someone do the final touch to make it read correctly. I
Maybe they
think
could
she
help me
knows
out.
what you want.
Yes,
And moved and seconded, and the person who moved the motion accepts the amendment. Do we need to vote on the amendment?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye,
Opposed?
okay,
Carried unanimously by those commission members present.
we go back to the main motion.
Okay, is there any other discussion regarding the main motion?
One
No
quick
other
thing.
comments?
So that change, the amendment we just made will be revised in the construction sequence and the stipulations.
no, what this permit stipulation identifies is that, that construction sequence is
Has
now
to
to
mirror
be,
this.
yeah, that this supersedes that.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
Would you like that to be added? I can add that in there.
I
But
think
although
we
it
can.
says as shown on the plans, and we do say that they should follow the construction sequence. Let's see.
All right. Everybody happy? No comments?
I think that needs to get clarified, Suzanne, no? Sorry.
Yes, yes.
Hold on one second, Earl. I'm sorry.
So
Um,
perhaps under where it's referenced, construction sequence stamped as received May 15th, 2021. I could also add on there saying, sequence arrangement modified at the April 20th, 2021 meeting.
Okay.
Good, Carrie?
Makes sense.
So that's under stipulation 5. You would say 2021 as modified at this hearing, yeah. Mhm. Or modified at this meeting. Mhm. That's just clarification. I don't think we need a motion of it.
I sense Suzanne is still writing.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else? In that case, I'd like to proceed to a vote, and I would like to vote last. I think perhaps, Carrie, if you could sort of call the roll and people
Emmett
could.
first in the alphabet. No?
Okay, you got, okay. Then we know what the order is.
Oh, you're looking for the
Well, I
order?
mean,
Do you have the
I guess
list?
so. You'll go by
Right.
the alphabet, you said, Carrie?
So that would be Dave Brzezowski would go first.
I'm
okay.
sorry, yes.
So in visiting the site, it seems a very difficult site. I mean, there's not a lot of room there. However, I'm always for trying to move towards getting something done. And as long as the construction sequence, the way it's laid out, and the other stipulations are abided by, I guess I'd have to vote yes.
Thank you. Who's up next? You, Carrie?
You really want me to go next? It's
Oh,
Dr.
that would be
Bennett.
Charles is next in the
Charles.
alphabet.
Oh, Charles, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm
Yeah,
third.
yeah.
All right, I had previously made comments of my feelings on this. And what, at this stage, with the modifications that we have put in, I will have to vote yes, because I cannot say that it's probable that this will cause problems with the wetlands. So under those circumstances, possible will have harm, but it's not necessarily probable. So I vote yes for the motion with the stipulations.
Thank you.
Okay, now
Must be
it's my
carried.
turn. And I'm voting no. And the reason is not a short reason, so I'm gonna read it. And the basic reason is because I don't believe that we've received information that we asked for, that we needed in order to make a decision. As we all know, the house garage driveway eliminate the 50-foot upland review area. There's narrow area between the proposed house. The road slopes, water flows westward. At the hearing on 3/2/21, Matt Sanford's wetland impact assessment was not available to the commission. It had been emailed that same day. However, he testified regarding important functions of the wetland, more detailed described in his 1/28/21 report. He testified that the higher quality wetland is to the west and the eastern wetland would function as a buffer to the western wetland. The commission asked at the end of this hearing for further information about this buffer theory. Substantiation of the theory that poor quality wetland would also be a new buffer to the wetlands. I believe that's on page 19. We then went into the public hearing of 3/16/21. Mr. Sanford was not there to testify, but Mr. Overton testified. The commission again asked about transferring the buffer from the upland review area to the eastern side. Mr. Overton in response testified as to what he thought regarding the hierarchy of the wetlands. And he testified in response to one of the commissioner's questions that the eastern wetland would continue to evolve. The issue, I did some research on, I'm nowhere an expert in this area, but looking at expert testimony outline on Connecticut Gov, it states experts often testify as to the significance of wetland. No such distinguishing standard exists in wetland and watercourse. Significance as used in the act only modifies the word impact and not wetland and watercourse. In some, the commission requested further testimony support of the applicant's apparent theory that the eastern wetland would serve as a buffer to the western wetland. And this relates to whether there is an adverse impact to both wetlands, not just the better wetland, the western, and knowing that the one is evolving. Because this further testimony was not sufficient, in my view, I'm not able to find that the proposed activities will not have a significant adverse impact on the adjacent wetlands. That's both of them, or watercourses.
Thank you. Tim, looks like you're next.
Yeah, the purpose of the upland review area is really to protect the wetlands itself. And the plan as laid out is moving that burden now directly into the wetlands itself. So the buffer between human activity presently is the upland review area, and then now it's going to be the wetlands itself. So that's very difficult to process through. The construction sequence that we reviewed and modified, I still, and I made the comment in the last meeting, I believe it's really threading a needle, trying to fit this in a small of area that's available to work with. And that's a given the size and the dimensions of the available area. I also believe that everything laid out, the additional information requested, the precautions that have been requested by the commission, especially for protection of that wetlands boundary itself, including the discussion and the modifications made tonight during the meeting. Considering all of that, I would vote in favor of the motion with the modifications listed.
Thank you. Will? Or no, that's W, huh? I'm sorry.
That's-
I'm sorry. What's your vote? What's your vote anyway?
I've been struggling with this one myself, going back and forth with both two very valid points. And Carrie, to be quite honest with you, just moved me to vote no on this, in that I completely agree with her that we did not get the information that we requested with regards to the buffer upper eastern wetlands. And I am not comfortable using wetlands as a upland review area per se, regardless of the functionality of those quote unquote, I forgot their terminology for the wetlands, but I'm not comfortable with this. I don't feel we have done this before, and I'm all about consistency on this committee. And I'm going to vote no.
Thank you. Tom?
Well, I'm probably looking at this a little bit more through builders, developers' eyes, or lens, if you will. But I gotta say, 15 minutes ago, I was leaning toward a yay vote, but Carrie's point is well taken. And actually, I even think Tim supported that point, but then decided to vote differently. I guess from a construction standpoint, I think it can probably be protected if the stipulations and the construction sequence are adhered to. But I think in the last meeting, I said things can go sour quick on something like this. So it's unsettling. But maybe, like I said, through a builder's lens, I think I'll vote yes, but with trepidation.
Okay, thank you. And it's my turn to vote, and I would say I'm going to vote no for the reasons that Carrie Dunn expressed. And I also think that there could be a better proposal. I'm not going to say that there's no way a house could ever be built there, but I think with some more planning, it's possible. And not that it makes much difference which way I voted, because we have 4 yeses, and with my vote now 3 noes by my scorecard.
Correct.
Okay. So the motion is carried and the application is approved. On to the next. New business, and the first item of business is a permit application for 648 Wallingford Road. And I'm going to recuse myself from that, since that's where I live. And Charles, could you just take over?
Of course.
Thank you.
I suppose you should mute yourself.
I should what?
Should mute yourself.
I'm going to exercise my rights as a citizen of the town of Cheshire, and I'm not going to speak, but I'm going to be in the audience.
Right, that's fine. That's just okay. So the new business permit application 648 Wallingford Road for age-restricted housing. This is being called Whispering Oaks. Is that the name of the proposed?
Yes.
And do we have someone representing the applicant here?
Yes, for the record, my name is Anthony Fazzone. I'm an attorney in Cheshire, representing the applicant. With me tonight is Andrew Quirk of Cratchit and Jones. He's a professional engineer and has primary responsibility for the design and layout of the proposal before you. Also this evening is Matt Stanford from SLR Consulting. He is a soil scientist, and he has been actively involved in the verification of prior mapping and the overall wetlands evaluation. With that, I turn it over to Andrew Quirk to let you know what the applicant is proposing.
Evening, Chair, Commission members. My name is Andrew Quirk, professional engineer and principal with Cratchit Jones and Associates. I do have some items to share on the screen, if it's possible to do the screen share.
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay.
Is anybody else hearing that?
It's very faint.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is the audio faint? Is this better?
Somewhat
That's better.
When my computer's making some, sounds like a woodpecker here.
So is mine.
I'm going to take the earpiece out and see if it, is this any better?
That's
Yes.
wonderful.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, on the screen before you, you should be able to see hopefully the existing conditions plan that was presented as part of the submission materials. And this is the color version with the aerial overlay. The project consists of 2 parcels. The first is a 18.94 acre parcel that I'm outlining with the cursor on the screen, outlined in red, which is 648 Wallingford Road, which consists of the home, open lawn area, some wooded area to the, this would be to the north. North is up and to the right on this sheet. And there's a wetland area that Matt Sanford, our soil scientist, will describe to the northerly portion of that property. Also part of the application is a 5.12 acre parcel on Talmadge Road that abuts the same property at the wetland area. And there's an additional wetland area that extends along that northerly property line out to Talmadge Road. Between the 2 parcels, there are 22.25 acres, of which 3.58 acres are wetlands on the property. Also on the Talmadge Road property is an area that is presently hayed, and we'll discuss that in detail as we discuss the open space plan as part of the development. The proposed site layout plan before you on the screen is an age-restricted development where it'll be common ownership with a private road serving 40 detached single-family homes. Again, age-restricted. The grades on the property are gentle, and the road is a curvilinear design to tie into those existing grades. The development requires sewer service that would come from Talmadge Road. There's presently an end of a sanitary sewer line at the end of the wetlands at Talmadge Road. And the proposal for the development is to connect sewer going through this easement area across the wetlands, and then provide it up to the property line so that future connections could be made in the Charles Drive neighborhood. There have been outlined in that neighborhood septic system issues whereby extension of the public sewer would be beneficial. And we have received the preliminary approval from regarding the sewer extension for the sewer connection across the wetlands is the one direct wetland impact for the project. As shown on the plans, the direct wetland impact is 1,560 square feet. And that's shown crossing at the nearest location in the wetlands. This is a larger scale plan showing that impact area. Sorry, this is the larger scale plan showing that impact area in red. Also outlined in orange are the upland review areas impacted. Most of the upland review area impact is associated with that sewer connection. The total upland review area impact on the plan submitted is 10,870 square feet. And again, most of that is associated with the sewer. Some of that upland review area disturbance is associated with the rear area of units 25, 27, 29, 31, and 33. All of those proposed units are located outside of the upland review area. But for safety and for some very minor grading, we like to have at least 30 feet from the unit to trees just for safety. These are all walkout units whereby the basement grade is right at the wetland buffer, the upland review area grade. So there's very little grading. It's just clearing to have a safe backyard area. We did call out for split rail fencing to be installed at the limit of that grading that's shown. There was a comment from staff and a question about it. The line type is shown similar to that of a guardrail, but the intention is, and the call outs are, that it would be a split rail fence, not a guardrail, just to clarify. And again, all those units are at least 50 feet from the wetlands. And so that would leave at least 30 to 40 feet of upland review area, depending on the particular location of the units, from the wetlands to the limited disturbance. I think at this point, I'd like to have Matt Sanford describe some of the environmental findings on the wetlands, and then I do have some more in terms of alternatives, but I think it would be probably better to understand the wetlands and the findings for that. So I do have a sheet that shows some of that. Matt, if you're available, if you'd like to describe your findings in terms of the wetlands.
Sure. Good evening. For the record, it's Matthew Sanford, professional wetland scientist, registered soil scientist with SLR. As Andy has described earlier in his presentation, this particular site was flagged or delineated by my colleague William Root back in 2016. Obviously, Bill has retired, and Andy reached out to me to take over this particular project and review the wetlands and verify the wetlands that had been previously flagged by William Root. So on March 30th, I completed a verification review of the wetlands on this property. Prior to my investigations out there, Crasher and Jones actually rehung the wetland flagging as shown on this plan and as completed by William Root in 2016. So if the commission has an opportunity to visit the site, you will see that there is blue and pink flagging demarcating the wetland boundary. I used that wetland boundary to verify Mr. Root's line. So in terms of describing the wetlands that are on this site, I think I'm going to refer to each site as Parcel A and Parcel B for my presentation. Parcel A is the 5.1 acre parcel located on Talmadge Road, or frontage on Talmadge Road. We have two specific wetland systems on that particular property. Andy, if you can point out the most northern wetland system. right there with your mouse. So this wetland system consists of really two wetland classifications. The first one is a forested wetland that really begins on the adjacent property. This flows west towards Talmadge Road. As you can see in the aerial, there's a forested section, and as you move further west where Andy's got the cursor over, it becomes a meadow or a wet meadow wetland. So we transform from a forested wetland area to a wet meadow wetland, and a channelized wetland that actually discharges under a culvert under Talmadge Road. So we've got the forested wetland and wet meadow wetland. I should point out that the wet meadow wetland is dominated by reed canary grass, which is a non-native invasive wetland species that unfortunately diminishes our biodiversity in our wet meadow wetlands. Atypical culturally, some one's dominated by reed canary grass. So that lowers the biodiversity of that particular wetland system in terms of the wet meadow area. As we move south, where we have that green circle, there's this wetland here is considered a Pellucturn forested wetland. We often call it a red maple swamp. This is an area that's has a depressional feature in the center of it. It has standing water. So if you were to go out there today and look at it, you'd probably find water depths of anywhere from 3 to 8 inches of standing water. There's actually 2 large tree throws in the center, and tree throws means the trees have toppled over during one of these windstorms that we've had, and they've actually created some deeper inundation or pits within that wetland, probably down to 2 feet in water depth. And so this wetland is considered a red maple swamp. It's got buttressed roots, it's got dark stained leaves. And during our investigations, we did find wood frog egg masses in this particular pool, a very minimal amount. I believe it was under 6 wood frog egg masses. But for all intents, so if we have the overall map, I think that would, there we go. So the wetlands on parcel B are a continuation of that forested wetland that I just described. Again, similar red maple swamp, very topographically flat through this particular wetland system as we move from west to east. There's some subtle microtopography in here, but not as much as we see in some of the other wetlands in town. The dominant trees in here are red maple, pin oak, a swamp white oak is another one that you find in here. The understory is relatively sparse in some cases and moderately dense in others. Multiflora rose is one of the dominant understory plants. Highbush blueberry, winterberry, silky dogwood is found there as well. There is one particular area, Andy, if we could point to the Phragmites patch right in this location here. Inside the wetland, there's a large Phragmites patch. That's what we'd consider a Pellucturn emergent wetland. That's located in interior of the forested wetland. And we'll talk about that a little later on as relates to the sewer line and the impacts to that particular wetland. As we move further east along the wetland, and obviously all the water is circle on the property here. This was another area that during our investigations had water depths of anywhere from 3 to 10 inches of water and had a depressional feature. It had trees and buttress roots, dark stained leaves, moss lines on the trees. And when we entered that particular pool, we found both wood frog egg masses and their wetland. So again, that wetland area within the in terms of primary functions and values of these wetlands are nutrient retention, because think about the dense vegetation that's out there, the high stem density, the mowed or maintained lawn to the south, the maintained lawns to the north, the agricultural field or meadow to the west. Obviously, one of the primary functions is nutrient transformation and retention. Certainly sediment retention as well is part of this wetland system. Wildlife habitat is probably the primary function of value. And in this case, in many wetlands, we don't typically have this, but here we have wetland dependent wildlife habitat given the vernal pools. So that's a very important function of the system. And groundwater discharge is also an important component. As you walk along the edges of the wetland, you find breakouts of groundwater through these wetland systems. So that's the overall existing conditions of the site. The one last thing I would say is that we did look at the Connecticut DEP Natural Resources Database layers, and this particular site is located outside of an NDB circle. So therefore, there was no NDB hits on this particular site. Andy, I think I'll come back on to talk about the impact in a few minutes.
Thank you, Matt. So with that, I think the next part I'd like to describe is the wetland crossing itself in a little more detail. We did, again, study that area where we, as shown on the plans, are showing the least amount of wetland square footage impact with the crossing at this location. But we did, upon further review and working on the plans, come up with an alternative, if I can find the right sheet. This plan here shows an alternative to the crossing that we wanted to discuss with the commission. Again, on this plan in dark blue, I'll try to zoom in close so that it's clear. Okay. So in the dark blue line here is the sewer crossing as shown on the plans you have before you, and that has 1,560 square feet of direct wetland impact here, and then the associated upland review area impact. We did go and put a lot of study into the crossing area and did a tree survey at the crossing. There are a number of open areas, as Matt Sanford described, and there's also some areas with larger trees. And although the plans before you show the least amount of direct wetland impact, and we wanted to show that, we don't believe that that's the best and the preferred alternative for the sewer crossing, given that it would impact a number of large trees shown in the light green area here. Let me know if I need to zoom in any closer. I tried to shade them in green to show the large trees that we picked up on the tree survey. If we slide the sewer line slightly over, shown in red, and cross in this location that I'm outlining, all of those mature trees would remain. There are a couple of small 8-inch red maples, but other than that, there's an opening in that location, and it would increase the direct wetland impact from 1,560 square feet to 1,770 square feet. But I believe it would have long-term less of an impact to the environmental system. Once the sewer line is constructed, it would be restored in a way to maintain the connectivity of the wetlands on either side.
Can I ask one quick question?
Yes, sir.
How deep, what's the depth of that sewer line? What kind of a cut would you be taking? I'm trying to get some sense of that. When you say wetlands impact, obviously if it was, 20 inches deep, wouldn't be a big deal, but if it's 10 feet deep, that might be another story. So I'm just looking for
10
some
feet according to the map I looked at.
I believe in this area here, I can go to the wetland submission plan. We have the sewer crossing where we did a profile. This is the profile of the crossing, and at the location shown, it is about, I thought it was more about 8 feet at this crossing area.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Thank you. I'm just looking for some perspective on how much,
Absolutely.
how much dirt's going to be moved. Thank you.
The depth between the two alternatives would essentially be the same. The wetlands are very flat in this location. So in part of comparing the alternatives, I would say the depth is essentially the same. But with the crossing at the location shown here, these are mature trees that if they're taken, we would be able to connect the wetland system much more similar to the existing habitat in the alternative red layout than in the although smaller direct wetland impact, I think has longer term impacts than the alternative.
That brings up when Matt Sanford comes back on for his turn here. I would like to see addressed what is planned in terms of trying to restore the wetlands as close to the original condition after you're through with. And I suppose from what you're saying, it's a lot easier to do a restoration if you don't have to restore a 50-foot high tree.
Absolutely. And Matt, you feel free. I think it'd be appropriate now if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. Again, for the record, Matt Sanford. So just to describe a little bit about the trees. So when I went out there to do my verification, I started to review the plan and started to look at the size of the trees. When we're talking large trees, we're talking 30-inch to 36-inch diameter trees. So, you know, when I started looking at that in terms of its impacts to the wetland, the large root mass, the large loss of canopy, I was concerned. Even though we were crossing the narrowest point, I was concerned to lose those number of trees would have the potential to allow the Phragmites, which is actually to the south of the red line right in there, to start to migrate eastward into the wetland. So I wanted to maintain that dense canopy, that dense shade that's currently preventing that frag from migrating east. So that was one important component of why I had actually requested Cratchit and Jones to go out there and survey the trees and look at opportunities and alternatives to actually shift the sewer line further to the west, although it would create additional impact. In terms of the restoration, the area that we're crossing is predominantly some frag and silky dogwood and multiflora rose with a couple isolated red maples. The plan would be to restore that area with similar species minus the Phragmites. It would be silky dogwood, red osier dogwood, I think I would add to this, as well as spicebush and our winterberry. We are in the process of developing that plan still because we weren't sure exactly where this sewer line would end up being, but that is our intention in terms of a restoration component for this particular area.
Would you be moving the organic component of the soil sideways so you could have that part go back on top of things?
Yeah, and so that's the other thing. I know there was a question related to how deep the sewer line is. Typically, if you had a shallow sewer line, you would typically probably get away with an area width-wise of probably anywhere from probably 10 feet. Because we are going down 8 feet, we're giving the contractor about 15 feet to work within. So he has equal opportunity, ample opportunity to swing the material, such as stockpiling the topsoil along the side for later reuse, and obviously stockpiling the subsoil separately on one side to go back in the hole after the sewer lines are in place. So yeah, the idea, Dr. Dimick, would be, and what would be specified in the plan as part of the mitigation plan for this area would be to reuse the existing organic soils that are presently within this particular location.
Which would contain within them root masses and seeds that would allow for help in the restoration.
Absolutely, and we would also propose, you know, with any type of shrub planting plan, we would certainly propose a native New England wet mix as well for this area to supplement any of the existing seed source that may be already within the underlying organic soils that are on site.
I'm trying to do my memory of what would be there. You're going to go through probably 5 or 6 feet of silts, but there are places there where bedrock's about 8 or 9 feet down. I don't know if anybody's done a boring to see what you're going to hit. Usually a valid thing to do if you're going to put a sewer line 8 feet down to make sure you're not going to hit rock.
Yeah, and we can get that information. Along with the sewer crossing itself and the restoration, we did want to discuss with the commission the open space plan, especially as it relates to the sewer crossing. I mentioned that now in conjunction with the sewer crossing because as part of the community development, there will be dedicated open space held by the homeowners association. And one alternative would be to allow access, walking access across where the sewer connection is made. Part of the restoration, that there would be some form of pedestrian access and walking access, a trail. Maybe it's not for all conditions, that at certain times of the year may be too wet to pass, allow access to the open space. Certainly, if the commission objects to that, we can provide the open space and access can be provided through the roadway network. The open space that we are looking at, if I zoom. Okay, so on this plan here, again, the overall plan, the entire 5.12 acre parcel would be preserved as open space. In addition to the wetlands and upland review area, as well as some open space areas within the development, to total at least 8.9 acres of open space held and preserved by the homeowners association. So with the majority, or at least 5 acres of that open space across the wetlands, one option would be to have some sort of trail access to the field area. If the commission would allow that. That would allow the residents to access the open space area without having to go around the roadway network. It's certainly feasible to go down Wallingford Road and Talmadge Road and access it that, or it just stays as open space for wildlife preservation and not for trail access from the development.
One thing that might be critical in making that decision, is there any, at any time of the year, water flow through that area?
There is. Matt, do you want to talk about some of the options that you outlined in terms of trail access?
Yeah, so there is some seasonal flow. I wouldn't say that there is a defined channel,
No.
as we would think as either a swale or an intermittent watercourse, or a perennial watercourse. And when we think of a defined channel, there is diffuse flow through here. It probably, if we had a significant rain event, it probably could get to 2 or 3 inches deep in some areas. So one of the thoughts I had, if it is amenable to allow some type of access through here, is what I've seen used successfully and we've used on projects would be to lay 4x4 posts with Trex attached to it's almost like a boardwalk, but it's not a raised boardwalk. It's a boardwalk that's sitting on the surface of the wetland that still allows flow to get underneath as it does today, because there is microtopography, some subtle microtopography through here, but it keeps people's feet from getting wet. That's something that we've successfully used on informal trails and recreational areas that are in large wooded areas, so it doesn't look as formalized as, say, a boardwalk and or a gravel path or wood chip path. So that was my initial thought as to a way of providing some access, dry access, obviously seasonally. Obviously, if we're out here in August, it's dry through this area. But again, in the spring conditions, winter conditions, there's certainly opportunities for water to be present at the surface. And obviously during larger rain events, there is some diffuse flow that does move from west to east across that proposed sewer line.
Got one more question.
Say that because 30 years ago or so, we had another project on Wallingford Road, and that's what was done as far as accessing open space. And that one was to put kind of a boardwalk over the seasonally wet area. So we have precedent for that solution.
I have a quick question. The area on parcel B that's not wetlands, where you're suggesting that the path may go to, is that going to be maintained in some way? I'm sure you could mow it, but is that the plan? Is that what
Parcel A.
the developer intends to do? Because that, you know, you wouldn't need access if they're just gonna let it overgrow. So I'm just wondering if that's the plan.
That's a great question, and we contemplated, and I think our first choice would be that it be mowed once or twice a year, just to maintain. There's some benefits to being a meadow. There's also benefits to letting it reforest, but we have the option with the property to continue to have it mowed once or twice a year, just so that it maintains a meadow. Again, we wanted to discuss that with the commission and see if there's a preference for the open space. You know, if it's preferred that it not be mowed, that would be the case. But we thought there might be some benefit to having an open space meadow area and maintaining it that way.
All right, just curious, because just curious. Thank you.
I'm wondering if the other commissioners feeling like I am, that we really need to take a look at this, because we've got two alternatives to look at. We've got maps, we've got photos, but there's nothing like ground truthing this for getting a better feel for things.
I would agree with that.
Again, we could, I don't know, the governor is loosening up on what we can do. What we could do, as we did the most recent one, is do it in terms of individual site walks. If we have a decent enough map in hand, and I think we wouldn't have any trouble if we got there seeing the area that's got the big trees and the area that doesn't have the big trees.
Can you put flags so we can see the red alternative and the blue alternative? I think, well, whatever. My gut is the red alternative is the way to go, even though it's,
Yeah,
I think it has less wetland impact, even though it's going across a broader piece. I just think it's the obvious choice.
I agree with you, Tom.
All great points. We have staked out this manhole that I'm showing here with my hand. And I can make sure that the red alternative is clear in the field compared to the other present layout. Also, we have put stakes at the rear of units 27 through 35, just at the actual corners of the rear of each of those units as well. So those are out there, and we can, if there's additional information the commission would like to see, we can make sure that that's flagged up prior to that.
possibly we can coordinate through staff so the staff can email us copies of just that area of the two things, and then we possibly can also coordinate through staff in terms of doing individual site walks. That we won't have to worry about the freedom of information if we're going out there one by one.
Yes,
Right.
Dr. Dimick, that it would not need to be noticed if members were planning on going out individually.
You know, I think that's the easier, less complicated way to handle that. And our next meeting is
Second,
April 2nd. So
May
that's
2nd,
May 2nd.
May 2nd. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Wait, I'm sorry, it's the 4th, May 4th.
Okay, May 4th. But give us time to do that between now and then. But I also suggest that if anybody wanted to make any kind of a written report on it, it makes a easier way to compare notes on that. Is there any more information we need before a site walk here that people are looking for?
I was just going to add, if you'd like, I can just make 8.5 by 11 sheets, essentially, of this showing the flag numbers and the crossing. That might be helpful. I can submit that to staff.
That would be great.
The only, at this time, I guess the only other information I would add would be relative to the stormwater management plan. If you'd like to hear that now, or, okay. So the overall stormwater management plan works with the grades. Again, there's very gentle flat grades on the site. And we tried to take advantage of some of the flexibility in design that we have with private roads and private road design. So we're only providing curbing on one side of the roadway adjacent to the sidewalk, just to protect the sidewalk and pedestrians on that one side. The other side of the roadway will be curbless. All the grades are very flat on the site, less than 3%. So it allows an opportunity for a sheet flow from a grass strip along the perimeter of the roadway system. There is also a stormwater collection system in addition to some of that treatment within the development that collects the stormwater, conveys it from those swales and cheat runoff areas to a stormwater management area. That has been located in an area that does have some of those invasive species and is somewhat of a today. So the mature trees around the perimeter that will remain. The stormwater management plan as a whole has a reduction in runoff through the 100-year storm event per the design for each of the sub watersheds. In addition, to promote groundwater recharge, each of the homes will have a roof water collection system to underground galleys. There is an overflow at the downspout to allow any overflow to bypass that system should there be an issue. But to try to promote groundwater recharge and through low impact development standards, try to mimic the patterns today of that water entering the soil. There are 3 watersheds for the property. I'm sorry, there's 2 in the existing conditions where the area from Wallingford Road drains westerly to an open culvert near Wallingford Road. And then the larger existing 2 drains northwesterly to the wetland system area. In the post-development that's maintained, we have no increase in the runoff to that culvert system on Wallingford Road. And then area 2A is part of that collection system to the stormwater basin. And 2B is the remaining area with the overflow from the galley system that goes to the wetland system. So there's 3 in the proposed. And a full stormwater management report has been submitted as well. So I think with that, that would probably conclude our presentation. At this time, we could take questions. And then if there's a list of information that's needed, I can certainly provide that to staff so that you're able to access the areas or have information on the areas of concern on the property.
Andrew, I just,
Tom, go ahead. Is that Tom?
no, it was me, Anthony Fazzone.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to ask Andrew, what's the best way to access the property in the wetland areas from Talmadge Road or from Wallingford Road?
I personally find it a little easier from Talmadge Road. There's a place to park on one of the side streets. It gives a good impression of the open space meadow area, walking through the meadow and coming down. This crossing is dry enough to walk across. There's some areas there. But either works, but I think that's sort of easier to get an impression of the open space, the meadow, and then coming in at the crossing area.
Thank
The
you.
flag numbers, I'm sorry, the flag numbers are readily visible as well too for orientation.
One thing we would want to see before the next meeting, and I know you're still developing this, would be a detailed construction sequence for the sewer crossing, including the restoration part of that.
Okay.
Other members of the commission have further questions or comments?
Just a clarification, the wetland boundary is flagged presently with blue, white flags. Is that correct?
Yes,
Go ahead,
yes,
Matt.
it has blue and pink flagging, actually.
Blue and pink. Okay.
And the flags are labeled with the flag numbers as shown on the plans.
And that matches the drawing then?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, yep.
Anything else?
The drawing that you showed for the stormwater management showing the curbing on the lower side, I guess it's the eastern side. That curbing, I'm trying to see it on the screen, but the curbing goes to what, for unit 34? And then what is in the center of it looks like there's curbing then in the center of the cul-de-sac area or the loop area. Is that correct? Am I interpreting that right? Or what is that in the center then?
Yeah, great question. And maybe I wasn't clear on it. The curbing is just adjacent to the sidewalk system, just from unit 2, the even numbers, up to unit 34.
34, okay.
And then this entire area here is curbless on both sides. And we have there's an inlet at the parking space, the community parking space. So any of that overflow from that system drains and is collected through this catch basin here.
Okay, so what's shown is it looks like a cross-hatched area inside the circle. Is that the drainage then, not the curbing? Yeah, right where your cursor was. It picks up right at the edge of the visitor parking area and then heads to the north.
There is a little bit of curbing here, you're correct, along the parking spaces to protect that sidewalk. There is some curbing there to protect that sidewalk, that's correct, but it's only at the sidewalk to provide a barrier between the parking spaces and the sidewalk.
Okay,
The
what is
rest
shown
of this
then?
is curbless.
Okay, what is headed to the right of that area then? Is that the drainage?
It's a sidewalk, isn't it?
This sidewalk here,
It's a sidewalk, okay.
and then there's a little gazebo. Try to make a community area here. But
Okay.
the roadway here, aside from those parking spaces, is a curbless design.
Okay, I was just trying to interpret what's on the map. Okay,
Sure, and maybe
thank you.
On the grading plan, let's. So on the grading plan, this whole area from 314 is draining down to this inlet here at 312. Whole thing is sheet flow down across that landscape area to the catch basin here. And the curb is just this area here. And then the curb starts here along the sidewalk.
Okay, yep. And then the catch basin drains towards the left or flows to the left.
Correct.
Okay.
And down to the stormwater management basin.
Stormwater management. Okay, thank you.
I think we're good. I think the site walk's going to be important, and have questions after that, perhaps.
Agreed.
I ask once again if anyone else has comments or questions. If not, are you ready to move on to the next item and bring our chairman back in?
I am indeed.
Good.
Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So be it. Mr. Kurtz, wherever you are,
I'm back. Looking
Aha,
at the map.
it's all yours.
Okay,
So excuse me, Andy, if you could take the information, there you
There
go.
we
Thank
go.
you. Thank you.
we got it. Second permit application of Highland Avenue, commercial building. Is there someone here representing the applicant?
I think Ryan McAvoy should be
It's
on.
John, it's John Mylone, Anthony. I had trouble unmuting. Apologize. Hello, everyone. Good evening. John Mylone here for the applicant.
Okay, what would you like to do?
We can get right into it. Did you have anything you wanted to read or anything first, or you just want me to get right into a overview of this application?
I don't want to
John,
read
I
anything,
think just an
something to
overview
read.
is good.
Okay, thank you. Austin Dowd from our office is on with me, and he's going to pull up some maps when we're ready, but I'll begin speaking. So this application is for a piece of property. It's about 1.5 acres in size. It's located on the east side of Route 10, opposite the Stop and Shop in Marshall's Plaza, just a little ways north of the town hall. The existing conditions map is up now, and it shows the outline of the parcel in yellow. It's an irregularly shaped parcel. It abuts the frontage of the parcel. It abuts right at the light, the northernmost light at the shopping center, the light that's closest to Stop and Shop. And right opposite that light is an existing office building that's kind of a little bit angular to the roadway, which you're familiar with. And it includes that parcel and the parcel just to the north, which includes an existing single-family home, which you may not have noticed driving by as often. It's a little bit more hidden, but that's the site. I'm sure everyone on the commission is familiar with this location, maybe not familiar with how the site exists, et cetera. The site is, as I said, it's irregularly shaped, just under 1.5 acres. It generally slopes downwards to the east from Route 10, from Highland Avenue, to the east and to the rear portion of the site, gently at the beginning and a little more steeply as you get further to the east. At the base of that slope, at least in the southern portion of the property, there's a small wetland system, which is a kind of an intermittent watercourse, which serves about a, can't remember the acreage here, about a 20-acre watershed, which is primarily paved area and developed area to the west and to the southwest of the site, extending generally back to the library, the town's library on Main Street and over this way. It's mostly enclosed drainage, which it becomes exposed as it approaches the site and then extends along the eastern property line, the southeastern property line in a northerly direction until it goes back into some enclosed systems further to the east. And that intermittent watercourse or kind of drainage ditch has a small kind of floodplain area associated with it as well, which is that little triangle right over there, which is slightly off the property, but is obviously related to the property. And that comprises about 250 square feet of regulated wetlands that exists on the property. Those wetlands were identified and mapped by our office, Matt Sanford, in the spring of 2021 and described in a letter to the commission dated March 25th, 2021, which is part of the application. The property is partially developed, as I said, with the office use and the associated parking, et cetera, and the house to the north. And drainage from the developed portion of the property exists in the form of a dry well basin in the parking lot to the east of the existing office structure, which generally functions to accept the drainage from that paved portion of the property. Property is able to be connected and currently connected to both public water and sanitary sewers. So there are no septic systems or related proposed uses as part of this application. Austin, do you want to go ahead to the site plan, please? Austin?
You can see the site plan, correct? Or is this
I
still
can't-
on the existing?
I can't. I don't know if others can.
Unfortunate.
All
We're
I
still
see
on
is
existing.
Yeah,
Your screen, new share. Sorry, how about now?
There
Yes.
we go.
So the proposal is for a Chase bank. The bank is about 3,000 square feet in size, one level,
How you doing?
which,
Hi, Nellie.
Mary Anthony in the background. Maybe he'll catch it in a second. Anyway, it's a Chase Bank, one level building, which will sit along the east side of Route 10. Access will be proposed, will exist from the existing point of the existing access, utilizing existing signal at that location, and come around to the south of the building and then to the east of the building, where we'll have parking for about 27 cars. And then there'll be a loop just to the north of the building for the drive-through facilities for the bank. All the development therefore takes place in the western half of the site, which is less steeply sloping and mostly level compared to the remainder of the site. I'll get into the drainage system in a second, but before I do that, there will be a retaining wall that's located along the edge of the parking, along that southern edge, which Austin's pointing to now, and then around to the east side of the parking area. That retaining wall will exist partially within and generally above the area of the site that begins to slope down to the drainage swale or intermittent stream that exists along the eastern boundary of the property. Does not get anywhere near that, but it will protect the site from having to fill any further. And that wall generally will 3 or 4 feet in height to up to around 10 feet in height. It's intended that would be constructed as an initial stage of the project to protect that slope from both sedimentation from the development and also from erosion. But we can talk about the construction details and sequence in a little greater detail. And I think that's probably one of the most important aspects of this application. Austin, if you can go to the next plan, please, we can talk about the drainage system. In all, there's about just under 4,000 square feet of upland area that is disturbed as part of this proposal. Some of that which already includes the existing parking area and drainage structure for the existing building. Others which is some land that has not currently developed, and that is generally in the along the edge of the 50-foot upland review area, both to the south end of the site and then where we have a discharge for our storm water management system. Storm drainage will consist of a new enclosed drainage system with catch basins located within the proposed parking area, discharging in the northeast corner of that area, first to a sediment chamber for a first round of cleansing, and then into a stormwater management basin, which has capacity for the first inch of runoff for a second round of cleansing, but also will control peak rates of runoff from the property so that after development, the peak rates of runoff for both the 2 through the 100-year storm are below existing conditions. The discharge will be via a level spreader to the south of that basin generally in a level portion of the site. Just above.
My own.
Not sure what that is. Just above the that wetland finger that I mentioned earlier that sits on the property. I guess at this point I'll stop and answer any questions. I think that's an overview of the proposal as it relates to the general proposal and the wetland systems on the site. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions?
Seems to me the major concern for us is going to have to be adequate sediment and erosion control considering the steep slopes there. I'm not sure if what's been submitted to us is adequate to answer any questions we have on that so far.
If I can jump in, Dr. Dimick, it's Ryan McAvoy. I've completed my other meeting, and John was helping me out for tonight. In terms of sediment erosion control, I would just say that, you know, with respect to the parking lot, that it's sort of contained by a proposed retaining wall. So the retaining wall can be constructed in a manner that really, along with downgradient sediment filter fence and hay bales, will really limit the potential for any discharge of sediment from the site. So in other words, the retaining wall can be continuously lifted up as the site is lifted up, and runoff on the top portion of the wall can be directed around the wall to the stormwater management basin.
I'm more worried about the stormwater management basin itself and the change in the contours necessary to construct that. That seems to me more potential problem for sediment and erosion control in that construction.
Okay, I'll add to that just by pointing out that the majority of our basin is an excavation. So there's not a tremendous amount of fill to construct the berm on the backside. So in reality, it's going to be there's going to be a significant ability to retain sediment during construction as the basin's being constructed, rather than in other circumstances, perhaps where you'd have a large fill condition to construct the berm. So there's a minor fill component, but the majority of the basin is in an excavation. So there's certainly be the ability to retain sediment during construction in that.
The southeast corner of that basin, you are putting in, that's where you're putting in fill to.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
About 2 to 3 feet of fill.
Yeah, that's the spot that I was looking at.
So downgrading to that, we do have sediment filter fence and hay bales. You know, standard S&E implementations for you know, downgrading of a stormwater basin. And we can certainly, Austin, if you could go to the sediment erosion control plan from the set, which we don't have unfortunately colored renderings of. We can point out or identify the features that we propose in those areas.
I may have to search through my pile and find it. Staff submitted to us 3 sets of maps for 3 different projects with lots and lots of sheets, and I probably see that one.
Well, Dr. Dimick, we just received the color renderings and they were planning on showing them tonight, so they were not in your batch.
The colored renderings just are a pretty picture.
Black and white.
But this goes to the old-fashioned black and white. So along the perimeter disturbance, we do have silt fence, hay bales, and primarily, as I mentioned in the beginning, the ability to channelize and direct runoff from the upgrading side of the retaining wall will be sort of critical to preventing any stormwater from going over the steeper portions of the existing grade. So that this essentially shows the picture of what I was describing before. And in the area of the basin itself, there's very limited activity within the upland review area, although obviously it is all upgrading of the wetland and watercourse itself. So.
Yeah, so I think I apologize. I probably missed that drawing and going through all the pieces of paper that I had submitted to me.
Yeah, I'm sure there's been inundated with paperwork.
Yeah, right there.
And Ryan, do you have a construction sequence for this that you can discuss? Oh, Ryan, you're muted.
Apologies. We do have a construction sequence on the title sheet, both during construction and also post-construction for ongoing maintenance of the stormwater basin, and recommended maintenance schedules for sweeping of the parking lot and things of that nature. So Austin, if you could scroll to the title sheet, I could, okay. So the construction sequence is fairly generic in nature, but we do call for the general sequence of installation of sediment erosion controls, creating temporary sediment traps, which again is in the vicinity of our stormwater basin. Begin construction of the retaining wall, then followed by installation of the foundation utilities and parking areas.
Is there
So it does-
demolition on this site? Is there an existing?
There's an
structure?
existing building, office building and single family residential home. Those
And
will be demolished, yes.
So is that in the construction sequence?
It is not listed here, although it should be. So we can certainly
I
amend
dare
it to
say.
include that.
I think it's number 6.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you,
Oh,
Austin.
thank you.
I couldn't read it. No, yeah, okay. We do have that accounted for. I'm sorry about that. Good thing you're here, Austin.
All right.
Okay, nothing else? What's your pleasure? Do we need more presentation? Do we need a
I don't know.
public hearing?
I'm pretty comfortable with the thing.
Yeah, I think it's doable with what we've got presented to us.
Okay. Suzanne, are you comfortable with the information provided?
Yes.
Okay.
We
I
could
guess we
perhaps
can-
instruct Suzanne to draft some kind of a motion for next time.
Okay, we'll leave it to Suzanne and
Okay.
prepare a motion for our next meeting. Anything else to say regarding this application?
Nope.
Okay, we'll move on. I understand that 3 and 4, there's not going to be discussion, just the introduction of the applications. 3 is the application for West Johnson Avenue for a commercial building.
Correct. And the date of receipt is today, April 20th, and this is on the schedule to be discussed at the May 4th meeting, as well as the next application, which is Notch Road, Beach Area Restoration, received April 20th, and this also will be on the agenda for discussion at the May 4th meeting.
All right. Is there any more business to come before this meeting?
No, there's not.
Since we were done, we can adjourn this meeting at 9:10.
All right, gang.
Thank
See
you.
you all in May.